Jesus, I surrender all to Him. I freely give.
30th of October, 1899, Volume 2, Threat of Chastisements for Rome. This morning my benign Jesus came all afflicted, and the first words he spoke to me were, "Poor Rome, how you will be destroyed. In looking at you, I cry over you." And he was saying this with such tenderness as to arouse compassion. But I could not understand whether it was only about the people or also the buildings. Since I had the obedience not to conform to justice, but to pray, I said to him, "My beloved Jesus, when it is about chastisements, one must no longer argue, but only pray." And so I began to pray, to kiss his wounds, and to make acts of reparation. And while I was doing this, every now and then he would say to me, "My daughter, do not use violence on me. By doing this, you want to use violence on me by force. Therefore, calm yourself." And I, "Lord, it is obedience that wants it so. It is not I that do this." He added, "The rivers of iniquities are so great as to reach the point of preventing the redemption of souls, and prayer alone and these wounds of mine can prevent this raging river from absorbing them all into itself." End of the reading.
30th of October 1902, Volume 4. Jesus Christ came to join God and man once again. This morning, as I was in a sea of worries and of tears because of the total abandonment of my highest good, while feeling consumed by the pain, I felt my mind being estranged, and I saw blessed Jesus sustaining my forehead with his hand, and something like a light which contained many words of truths inside. I can barely remember this, that is, when our humanity untied the bond of obedience which God had placed between himself and the creature, a bond which alone united God and man, it became dispersed. And Jesus Christ, taking on human nature and making himself our head, came to reunite the dispersed humanity, and with his obedience to the volition of the Father, he came to join God and man once again. But this indissoluble union is strengthened further according to our obedience to the divine volition. After this, I no longer saw my dear Jesus, and that light withdrew together with him. End of the reading.
30th of October 1903, Volume 5, Teachings about Peace. This morning, since my adorable Jesus was not coming, I was thinking in my interior, who knows whether it is true that it was our Lord who was coming, or rather it was the enemy to deceive me? How could Jesus Christ leave me in such an ugly way without pity? And while I was thinking of this, he made himself seen for a few instants, and raising his right hand, pressing his thumb on my mouth, told me, "Be quiet, be quiet." And besides, would it be nice if someone who has seen the sun, only because he does not see it, says that what he has seen was not sun? Would it not be more true and reasonable if he said that the sun has hidden? And he disappeared. I could not see him, but I felt that with his hands he was retouching me all over and rubbing my mouth, my mind, and so on. And he made me all shining. Since I could not see him, my mind continued to raise doubts, and he, making himself seen again, added, "You still don't want to stop it. You want to make my work in you disappear, because my doubting you are not at peace, and since I am the fount of peace, as the one who guides you does not see you at peace, you will cause him to doubt that it is not the King of peace who dwells in you. Ah, you do not want to be attentive. It is true that I myself do everything in the soul, such a way that without me she would do nothing. But it is also true that I always leave a thread of will to the soul, so that she too may be able to say, I do everything of my own will. So by being restless, you break this thread of union with me, and you bind my arms in such a way that I am unable to operate in you, waiting for you to put yourself at peace again in order to take the thread of your will again and continue my work. End of the reading.
The 30th of October 1916, Volume 11, Threats of Scourges, especially for Italy. I was lamenting to my always lovable Jesus, for in these past days he would hardly come, or I would just barely perceive his shadow, and then he would disappear. And blessed Jesus told me, my daughter, how quickly you forget that on those days in which I do not come so much, and I escape you, it is for nothing else but to give one more winding to the scourges. Things will rage more and more. Man has reached such perversity that it is not enough to touch his flesh to make him surrender, but I have to come to the point of pulverizing him. Therefore one nation will invade another, and they will lacerate each other. Blood will flow like water in the towns. Even more, in certain nations, they will become the enemies of themselves, and they will fight one another. They will kill one another. They will do crazy things. How much man grieves me. I myself cry over him. At the words of Jesus, I burst into crying, and I prayed him to spare poor Italy. But Jesus continued, Italy, Italy. If you knew how much evil she is up to, how many plots against my church, the blood she is causing to be shed in battle is not enough for her. She is thirsty for more blood, but wants the blood of my children, the blood of the primate. She wants to stain herself with such crimes as to draw upon herself the revenge of heaven and of other nations. I remain terrorized. I fear greatly, but I hope that the Lord will placate himself. End of the reading.
The 30th of October 1922, Volume 14, The Prodigies of the Creature Operating in the Divine Will. Continuing in my usual state, my always adorable Jesus came and, plunging me into the immense light of his most holy will, told me, my daughter, look at the prodigies of the creature operating in my will. As she enters into my will and thinks, prays, works, she rises with me. And since I am voice without word, my voice is formed and reaches each heart according to its own needs and in many different ways and languages which are in the creatures, in such a way that all can understand me. I am work without hands, and therefore I am work of each one. I am step without feet, in such a way that wherever I go, I find myself in act. In the same way, the soul, by operating in my will, becomes voice without word, work without hands, step without feet, and I feel her flowing in my voice, in my works, and in my steps. I feel her everywhere, and as I feel her always together with me, I no longer feel lonely. And since I love the company of the creature very much, taken by love for her, I divinize her, I enrich her, and I give her such graces as to astonish heaven and earth. End of the reading.
The 30th of October 1923, Volume 16. One who lives in the divine will is nourished by the flames of Jesus and filtered through the light of the divine will in order to be deified in God. I live always embittered, with my heart petrified by the pain of the privation of my sweet Jesus. I feel without life, because the one who is true life is not with me. Oh, how often I repeated, tell me, O my only and highest good, where did you direct your steps, so that in following them I may find you? Ah, from afar I kissed those hands, which with so much love embraced me and pressed me to your heart. I adore and kiss that face, which showed itself to me with so much grace and beauty, and which now hides and is far away from me. Tell me, where are you? Which way should I take in order to reach you? Tell me, what should I do? Where did I offend you, that you run away from me? Yet you told me that you would never leave me, and now you leave me. Ah, Jesus, Jesus, come back to the one who cannot live without you, to your little daughter, to your little exile. But who can tell all my laments and the nonsense I said? Then in the meantime, I felt like losing my senses, and I could see a dove all on fire, which was agonizing, and a person near it who from his burning breath was feeding the dove with his flames in order to nourish it, preventing it from taking any other food, holding it tightly and so close to his mouth that it could do nothing but breathe and swallow the flames which came from him. The poor dove agonized and turned into those flames with which it was nourished. I was surprised in seeing this, and my Jesus moving in my interior told me, "My daughter, why do you fear that I may leave you? In order to leave you, I should leave myself, which I cannot do. As much power as I have, I do not have the power to separate from myself. The same is for one who does my will. Since she becomes inseparable from me, I lack the power to separate from her. Not only this, but I keep nourishing her with my own flames. Have you not seen that dove all on fire? It was the image of your soul, and the one who was feeding it with his breath was I, who so much delight in nourishing one who lives in my will only with the flames unleashed by my heart and through breath. Don't you know that one who lives in my will must be filtered through the most pure light of it? And to be filtered is more than to be put under a press, because even though the press crushes all to pieces, it lets everything out, both seeds and skin, which settle at the bottom and leave always something cloudy. On the other hand, when something is filtered, and especially if it is filtered through the thick light of my will, there is no danger that it might deposit something cloudy. Rather, everything is clear, similar to the clearness of the light through which it has been filtered. And this is a great honour for the soul who lives in my will, that whether she thinks, speaks, loves, etc., my will takes the commitment to filter whatever she does through its most pure light. And this is necessary so that in everything she does, there may be no distinction from what we do, but all things may hold hands and share their likeness. Then, as he was saying this, I found myself outside of myself, within a garden, and tired, I sat down under a tree to rest. But the rays of the sun darted through me in such a way that I felt I was burning. I wanted to go under a thicker tree which would produce more shade, so as not to be hurt by the sun. But a voice, it seems to me that it was my beloved Jesus, prevented me from doing so, saying, "One who lives in my will must be fully exposed to the rays of the burning and eternal sun in order to live of light, to see nothing but light, and to touch nothing but light. This leads to the deification of the soul. Only then can one say that the soul is in my will, when she remains all deified in God. Even more, come out from under this tree and stroll in this celestial Eden of my will, so that gazing at you thoroughly, the sun may convert you into light and may give you the final touch of your deification in God." I began to stroll, but as I was doing this, obedience called me back into myself. End of the reading. The 30th of October 1924, Volume 17. Why the Angels Are Angels and how they maintain themselves in the prime act in which they were created. I feel I cannot entrust my sorrowful secrets to the pen, nor express on paper what I feel within my martyred heart. Ah, yes, there is no martyrdom which can compare to the martyrdom of the privation of my sweet Jesus. The martyr is wounded and killed in his body. The martyrdom of his privation wounds the soul. It lacerates her in her most intimate fibres. And what is worse is that it kills her without making her die, to strike her continuously on the iron anvil of pain and of love. And as I pass over the pain, I feel in my interior, because these are things which I cannot say. Like one of the poorest beggars, I would like to beg everyone, the angels, the saints, my Queen Mama, the whole of creation, for a word, a little prayer to Jesus for me, so that, prayed by all, he may be moved to compassion for the little daughter of his will, and let her come back from the hard exile in which I find myself. Then I was thinking to myself about what had passed through my mind. That is, it seemed to me as if I had my angel near me instead of Jesus. And I said to myself, and why the angel and not Jesus? At that moment, I felt him move in my interior, saying to me, my daughter, do you want to know why the angels are such? Because they maintain themselves beautiful and pure, just as they came out of my hands, because they have always remained still in that first act in which they were created. Therefore, being in the prime act of their existence, they remain in that single act of my will, which, not knowing succession of acts, does not change, nor decrease or increase, and contains within itself all possible imaginable goods. And the angels, maintaining themselves in that single act of my will, through which I delivered them to the light, remain immutable, beautiful, and pure. They have lost nothing of their primary existence, and all their happiness is in willingly maintaining themselves in that single act of my will. They find everything in the circuit of my will, nor do they want, in order to be happy, anything other than what my will administers to them. But do you know why there are different choirs of angels, one superior to the other? There are some which are closer to my throne. Do you know why? Because my will manifested itself in its act, to some with one single extension of knowledges and qualities, to some with two, to some with three, to some with four, and so on up to 9 choirs. And in each additional thing of the act which my will manifested, some become superior to others, and the first ones, more than the others, became able and more worthy to be close to my throne. Therefore, the more my will manifests itself in them, and they remain in it, the more they are raised, embellished, made happy and superior to others. See then how everything is in my will, and from the ability of the angels to maintain themselves without ever leaving in that same will from which they came, and from the greater or lesser knowledge of the divine science of my supreme will, come the different choirs of angels, their distinct beauties, the different offices, and the whole celestial hierarchy. If you knew what it means to have a greater knowledge of my will, to do one more act in it, to maintain oneself, and to act in that will of mine, which is known, the level at which the creature is constituted, and the office, the beauty, the superiority of each creature, oh, how much more would you appreciate the different knowledges which I manifested to you about my will. One more knowledge about my will raises the soul to such sublime height that the very angels remain stupefied and enraptured, and they profess me incessantly, holy, holy, holy. My will manifests itself and calls things from nothing, forming beings. It manifests itself and embellishes. It manifests itself and raises one higher. It manifests itself and expands the divine life in the creature. It manifests itself and forms in her new and unheard of portents. Therefore, from the many things I manifested to you about my will, you can understand what I want to do with you and how much I love you and how your life must be a chain of continuous acts done in my will. If the creature, just like the angel, never left that prime act through which my will delivered her to the light, what order, what portents would not be seen upon earth? Therefore, my daughter, never go out of your origin in which my will created you, and may your prime act be always my will. After this, with my thought, I placed myself near my Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I prayed him to let me penetrate into that love with which he so much loved me. And my Jesus, moving again in the depth of my interior, told me, my daughter, enter into my love and never leave it, run after it, or stop in my own love in order to comprehend well how much I loved the creature. Everything in me is love toward her. In creating this creature, the divinity intended to love her always. So in everything, inside and outside of her, it was to run toward her with a continuous and incessant new act of love. Therefore, I can say that in every thought, gaze, word, breath, heartbeat, and in all the rest of the creature runs an act of eternal love. But if the divinity intended to love this creature always and in everything, it was because it wanted to receive in everything the return of the new and incessant love of the creature. He wanted to give love in order to receive love. He wanted to love to be loved in return. But it was not so. Not only did the creature not want to maintain this alternation of love or to respond to the echo of the love of her Creator, but she rejected this love. She denied it and offended it. At this affront, the divinity did not stop, but continued its new and incessant love toward the creature. And since the creature would not receive it, it filled heaven and earth with it, waiting for one who would take this love so as to receive love in return. In fact, when God decides and proposes, all adverse events do not change him. Rather, he remains immutable in his immutability. And so this is why, moving on to another excess of my love, I, Word of the Father, came upon earth, and taking on a humanity, I gathered within myself all this love which filled heaven and earth, in order to return the divinity with as much love, or as much as it had given and was to give to the creatures. And I constituted myself love of each thought, of each gaze, of each word, heartbeat, movement, and step of each creature. Therefore, my humanity was worked by the hands of the eternal love of my celestial Father, down to its most little fibre, in order to give me the capacity to enclose all the love that the divinity wanted to give to the creatures, to give to my humanity the love of all, and to constitute me love of each act of creature. So each one of your thoughts is crowned by incessant acts of love. There is nothing inside and outside of you which is not surrounded by my repeated acts of love. This is why in this garden my humanity moans, pants, agonizes, feels crushed under the weight of so much love, because I love and I am not loved in return. The pains of love are the most bitter ones, the most cruel. They are pains without pity, more painful than my very passion. Oh, if they loved me,
The weight of so much love will become light. When it is returned, love remains quenched and satisfied in the very love of the one who loves. But when it is not returned, it becomes crazy, delirious, and it feels the love it unleashed as being returned with an act of death. See then how much more bitter and painful was the passion of my love, because if in the passion they gave only one death, in the passion of love, the ungrateful creatures made me suffer as many deaths for as many acts of love as came from me, for which I received no return. Therefore come, my daughter, to give me the return of so much love in my will, and you will find all this love as though in act. Make it your own, and together with me, constitute yourself love of each creature, to give me the return of the love of God.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender all
The 30th of October, 1927, volume 23. How the divine, The 30th of October, 1927, volume 23. How the divine love gushed out in creation. Liberality and magnificence of God in creating the machine of the universe, especially in creating his beloved jewel with no one's merit. Vision of the divine will of wanting to come to reign in the midst of creatures, its balsamic air, its enchanting and enrapturing beauty, what the knowledge is about it will do. I was feeling all abandoned in the divine fiat, and I felt my poor mind as though soaked with the light of its sanctity, beauty, and indescribable happiness. To possess the fount of all goods, to enjoy the expanse of the infinite seas of all joys, to possess all the attractions of inexhaustible beauties, of divine beauties, to the point of enamoring God himself, and to live in the divine volition by letting it reign in one's soul, is all the same. Will of God, how lovable, adorable, desirable you are, more than my very life. Your reigning is reign of light, that has the power of emptying me of what does not belong to its light. It is reign of sanctity that transforms me, not in the sanctity of the saints, but in the sanctity of my Creator. It is reign of happiness and of joy that puts to flight away from me all bitternesses, troubles, and bothers. But how can the creatures ever dispose themselves and merit receiving a kingdom so great? Now, while I was thinking about this, and my mind was swimming in the expanse of the sea of the divine fiat, my lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, and pressing me to himself all tenderness, told me, "My little daughter, you must know that our love gushed out in creation and overflowing outside of ourselves, without anyone having merited such a great good, not even with a single word. Our highest goodness and liberality with no limits created the whole machine of the universe with such great magnificence, order, and harmony, for love of the one who did not yet exist. After this, our love gushed out more strongly, and we created he for whom all things had been created. And since in operating, we operate always with unreachable magnanimity, and while we are not depleted, we give everything, so that nothing of magnanimity, of greatness, and of all goods may be lacking to our work in creating man, with no merit at all on his part, as dowry, foundation and substance of all goods, joys and happinesses. We gave him our will as his kingdom, so that he might lack nothing, having a divine will at his disposal, and with it our supreme being. What honour would ours have been if the work of creation had been poor, meagre, and light, without the multiplicity of so many created things, without order and without harmony, and our dear jewel, our dear son, which is man, without the fullness of the goods of he who had created him? It would not have been honour for the one who possesses everything and can do everything to do an incomplete work. More so, since in gushing out so very strongly, as more than mighty waves, our love wanted to give, to show off as much as it could, to the point of filling our beloved jewel with all possible and imaginable goods, and forming seas around him, placed in him by his Creator, that would overflow from him himself. And if man lost this, it is he who rejected of his own will the kingdom of my will, his dowry, and the substance of his happiness. Now,
As in creation, my love is gushing out strongly, and it is decided that the kingdom of my will wants its life in the midst of creatures. Therefore, showing off with all magnificence, without looking at their merits, and with insuperable magnanimity, it wants to give its kingdom again. Only it wants creatures to know this and to know its goods, so that by knowing them, they might long for and want the kingdom of sanctity, of light, and of happiness. And just as one will rejected it, so may another one call it, long for it, press it to come to reign in the midst of creatures. Here is then the necessity of the knowledges about it. If a good is not known, it is neither wanted nor loved. Therefore, the knowledges will be the messengers, the heralds that will announce my kingdom. My knowledges about my fiat will take the attitude now of suns, now of thunders, now of bolts of light, now of mighty winds, that will call the attention of the learned and of the ignorant, of the good and also of the evil, falling into their hearts like lightnings and knocking them down with irresistible strength to make them rise again in the good of the knowledges acquired. They will form the true renewal of the world. They will assume all attitudes in order to attract and win the creatures, taking the attitude now of peacemakers who want the kiss of the creatures to give them their own. So as to forget about all the past. Oh gosh. So as to forget about all the past and remember only to love each other and make each other happy. Now of warriors, sure of their victory, to render sure the conquest they want to make of those who come to know them. Now of incessant prayers that will cease to supplicate only when creatures, conquered by the knowledges of my divine will say, you have won, we are now prey to your kingdom. Now of king, dominating and inspiring love, such that they will lower their foreheads to let themselves be dominated. What will my will not do? It will place the whole of its power in attitude in order to come to reign in the midst of creatures. My will possesses an enrapturing beauty, that if it makes itself seen with clarity even just once, enraptures, embellishes, casting its waves of beauty over the soul, in such a way that they will not easily be able to forget a beauty so rare, and will remain as though in the maze of its beauty, unable to get out. It possesses an enchanting power, and the soul remains fixed within its sweet enchantment. It possesses a balsamic air, such that as it is breathed, they will feel enter into themselves the air of peace, of sanctity, of divine harmony, of happiness, of the light that purifies everything, of the love that burns everything, of the power that conquers everything, in such a way that this air will bring the celestial balm to all the evils produced by the bad, morbid, and deadly air of the human will. See also in the human life, air acts in a surprising way. If the air is pure, good, healthy, fragrant, the respiration is free, the blood circulation is regular, and creatures grow strong, nourished, rosy, and healthy. But if the air is bad, stinking, and infected, the respiration is hampered, the blood circulation is irregular, and not receiving the life of the pure air, creatures are weak, pale, gaunt, and sickly. The air is the life of creatures. They cannot live without it. But there is a great difference between good and bad air. So it is with the air of the soul. The air of my will maintains life pure, healthy, holy, beautiful, and strong. as it came out from the womb of its creator. The deadly air of the human will deforms the poor creature. It makes her descend from her origin, and she grows a sick, weak, such as to arouse pity. Then with a more tender emphasis, he added, "Oh, my will, how lovable, admirable, powerful you are! Your beauty enamors the heavens and maintains the enchantment that enraptures the whole celestial court in such a way that they are happy not to be able to move their gazes from you. Oh, please, with your enchanting beauty that enraptures everything, enrapture the earth, and with your sweet enchantment, enchant all creatures, so that one may be the will of all, one the sanctity, one the life, one your kingdom, one your fiat on earth as it is in heaven. One your fiat on earth as it is in heaven." End of the reading.